The massive wooden doors of St. Michael's Cathedral creaked open, their deep groan echoing through the high vaulted ceilings. A gust of cold morning air rushed inside, causing the candle flames near the altar to flicker. The congregation, already seated in their pews, instinctively turned toward the entrance, their whispers growing in volume. A tall figure stepped through the doorway, his towering silhouette momentarily framed against the bright morning light. As he moved forward, the sunlight caught his features, revealing Barron Trump, a name known to all, yet a face rarely seen in places like this. At just 18 years old, he carried the weight of a name that stirred emotions: admiration, skepticism, expectation, and judgment. His 2-meter frame was impossible to ignore, his broad shoulders giving him an almost regal presence. But it wasn't just his height or the name that made the congregation murmur. It was why he was here. Is that really him? Why would he come here? Does he even believe in this? The whispers floated through the air as Barron walked down the aisle, his calm, measured steps carrying him forward. His posture was straight, his expression unreadable, his gaze unwavering. He wasn't here for spectacle, but his mere presence had already transformed the atmosphere of the cathedral. He approached the third row, just a few seats from the front, and lowered himself onto the wooden pew. Even as he sat, his height remained striking. He rested his hands on his lap, fingers lightly intertwined, exuding an air of quiet confidence. At the altar, Father Gregory, an older priest with a stern but wise gaze, watched carefully. He had been preaching in this cathedral for over 30 years, and he had seen politicians, celebrities, and the wealthy walk through these doors before. But they often came for appearances, not for faith. And now here was Barron Trump, the son of a man who had divided the world, a figure scrutinized by millions. Why was he here? Father Gregory had already planned his sermon for today, but fate had just rewritten it for him. He cleared his throat and stepped forward, his voice deep and unwavering as it filled the sacred space. My dear brothers and sisters, today we gather not just in the house of God, but in the presence of truth. Today we speak of morality, not the kind that is proclaimed, but the kind that is lived. The congregation listened attentively, though many kept glancing at Barron. Father Gregory continued, his words gaining intensity. It is easy to speak of goodness when surrounded by wealth. It is easy to claim righteousness when one has never known true struggle. But I ask you all, can a man be good simply because of his name? Can morality be inherited, like a fortune passed from father to son? A heavy silence filled the air. This was no longer just a sermon. This was a challenge. A direct, open challenge aimed at the young man sitting in the third row. Barron's expression remained neutral, but he could feel the weight of 100 eyes on him. He had been judged his entire life, but this was different. This wasn't a journalist twisting his words or a social media frenzy distorting his actions. This was a test, here and now, in front of God in an audience seeking truth. Father Gregory's piercing gaze locked onto Barron. Tell me, young man, the priest said, his voice cutting through the silence. What have you sacrificed? What have you done to prove that you are not just another heir to power, but a man of virtue? The congregation stiffened, eyes darting back and forth between the priest and Barron. Would he answer? Would he walk out? Would he fire back? Barron did none of those things. Instead, he stood up. The entire church fell silent. His movement was slow, deliberate. As he rose to his full height, the tension in the room intensified. His imposing frame made even the tall stone columns seem smaller, but it was his composure that demanded attention. He met Father Gregory's gaze, not with defiance, not with arrogance, but with something far more powerful: calm, conviction, truth. His voice, deep and steady, filled the cathedral effortlessly. You ask what I have sacrificed, Father, but tell me, do you believe sacrifice must always be seen? Do you believe true morality is something that must be proven for applause? The priest hesitated for a brief second, a fraction of a moment that most would have missed, but Barron saw it. Father Gregory folded his arms. Are you saying that we should trust in what we cannot see? Barron took a step forward, his movements slow but certain. I am saying that the greatest acts of virtue are often the ones no one notices. The choices we make when no one is watching, That is the measure of a man. A ripple of murmurs spread through the pews. Father Gregory's expression remained stern, but there was a new depth to his gaze. Fine words, the priest said, his voice measured. But words are easy, young man. Tell me then, what do you truly stand for? Barron's jaw tightened slightly, but not out of frustration, out of resolve. I stand for truth. The simplicity of his answer made the congregation stir. Not the kind that is convenient, he continued, not the kind that pleases the powerful, but the kind that exists even when no one wants to hear it, even when it is painful. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Father Gregory, a man known for his relentless scrutiny, seemed to pause. He had expected resistance. He had expected defensiveness. But instead, he had found something much rarer: conviction without arrogance, strength without pride. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with unspoken thoughts, with an unshakable understanding that something profound had just happened. Finally, the priest nodded, his expression unreadable. Perhaps you are right, he admitted, his voice quieter now. Perhaps morality is not always meant to be seen. Barron, offering no further words, gave a slight nod and returned to his seat. The congregation sat in stunned silence, absorbing what had just unfolded. Some looked at Barron with newfound respect, others with curiosity. But one thing was certain: no one would forget this day. A charged silence filled St. Michael's Cathedral. The last words spoken by Barron Trump still hung in the air, thick with weight and meaning. Father Gregory, a man known for his unyielding scrutiny, studied the young man before him. He had expected defiance, maybe even frustration, but instead he had found something that unnerved even him: an unshakable certainty in Barron's eyes. The congregation remained frozen, their breath collectively held, their minds racing with questions. Had the priest just conceded? Barron had not backed down. He had not sought to defend himself with excuses or privilege. Instead, he had stood firm, not with arrogance, but with truth. Yet Father Gregory was not a man to let things end so easily. He had spent decades challenging those who believed themselves righteous, and he was not about to let this young man walk away untested. The priest slowly descended the altar steps, his robe flowing around him as he moved closer. His piercing eyes, aged with wisdom and experience, locked onto Barron's, as if trying to peer into his very soul. Truth, he finally repeated, his voice quieter now, but no less powerful. You say you stand for truth, but truth is not just an idea, it is a burden, one that requires sacrifice, pain, and loneliness. Do you truly understand what you claim to stand for? Barron did not flinch. I do. A murmur spread through the congregation again. Father Gregory's lips pressed into a thin line. Then tell me, young man, what is the greatest truth you have ever learned? The question was met with a long, heavy pause. Some people in the church expected Barron to falter, to stumble over his words, to seek an easy way out. But he didn't. He simply took a slow breath, letting the weight of the moment settle before he spoke. That power does not make a man strong, he said, his voice calm yet unwavering. What makes a man strong is knowing when not to use it. Silence. A few people in the pews leaned forward. Others exchanged glances, processing what had just been said. But Father Gregory did not react immediately. He watched Barron with the keenest of eyes, searching for hesitation, for uncertainty. He found none. Interesting, the priest finally murmured. Tell me then, what do you consider power? Barron took a step forward, closing the distance between them. Power is the ability to control, he said. It is the ability to influence, to shape the world, to command others. But true power, true strength, is knowing when to step back. It is knowing when to stay silent, when to listen instead of speak, when to lead not with force but with patience, with restraint. A man in the back of the church cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Others shifted in their seats. Father Gregory lifted his chin slightly. And yet, the world sees power differently. The world sees power as dominance, as control, as force. Do you not think that makes you naive? Barron let a small, almost imperceptible smile touch his lips. I think it makes me dangerous. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Father Gregory's brow furrowed, but before he could speak, Barron continued. Because the world does not fear power that is used recklessly. The world expects that. The world is used to men who shout, who fight, who take. He let his words settle before adding, but the world does not know how to handle those who choose to walk away, who choose to hold back when they could destroy, who choose patience over violence, wisdom over impulse. That is the kind of power people do not see coming. That is why it is dangerous. The room was electric. Some people nodded as if seeing the truth in his words. Others looked skeptical, almost unwilling to believe that someone so young could speak with such clarity. Father Gregory's expression softened ever so slightly. He had pushed, expecting resistance, perhaps arrogance. But instead he had found something far rarer. Wisdom. He exhaled slowly. You speak as though you have already lived many lives. Barron's gaze did not waver. I have lived under many judgments. That is enough. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Father Gregory gave a small, slow nod. Perhaps there is more to you than I expected. Barron simply nodded back and took his seat. But the church was forever changed. The congregation sat in stunned silence, absorbing what had just unfolded. Some looked at Barron with newfound respect, others with curiosity. But one thing was certain. No one would forget this day. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire and challenge us to grow. What would you have done if you were in his shoes? Let us know in the comments below.